So it is the 31st of December 2020, and the ordeal of this year is almost over, even though I guess the real 2020 runs until March, but that's another matter. And who, honestly, is going to be sorry to see this one go? Is there going to be anyone on the surface of the earth that will say, 2020 was a great year, I had a really good time? But that sentiment really only makes any kind of sense if 2021 is going to bring improved fortunes for all, and we can look forward to better things, better experiences for everyone. Can we be sure that that is the case? Well, we're going to try and see today what evidence there is to enable anyone to have any kind of hope or optimism for January 2021. It is my fourth show this year with Charlie Freak. Welcome back on, brother.
Such a pleasure to be here, Mark. We are brothers in this journey, and you have done such an incredible job guiding these shows, and I thank you so very much. And it just seems so perfectly appropriate that on the last day of the year that you talked about, 2020, that we should be putting the finishing touches on this story of the takedown of the Cabal from A to Z. And we went over this in detail yesterday, and this show is a bombshell. And this is what's happened. All of you deserve to know this. And we really hope that this helps you to, as Mark said, process through the next few days as we get into the 2021.
Sure. Well, the way I'd like to play this is, first of all, I'm going to pretty much give you the floor to say whatever you need to say. Then I'd like to come in with some questions, and these are going to be questions that I think a lot of the audience would like to ask themselves. They would like to hear your response to these. So I'm going to hit you with a few of those. But we'll kick off with two questions that have been asked interminably throughout 2020. At every point along the way. What's going on and where are we at? Over to you.
Now, Mark knows the answer to this question, and it's a heck of an answer. It's the most remarkable thing that we have ever encountered, because essentially this is, and I just want to make this very, very clear. Everything that you're hearing today, I have worked incredibly hard and have received some positive responses from within those that would know as to this information that I'm on the right track and have pieced things together. But in terms of the very, very detailed specifics, much of this, again, it's important for you to know, are my suppositions. This is the work, the research that Colleen and I have done into this very, very deeply. So in terms of the overall premise, we know that this is absolutely the case. And in terms of some of the specific dates and amounts, these are things that we could not possibly know. So just keep that all in mind. That's always been the case through parts 1 and 2 as well, as we've gone through this. But as Mark said, essentially, what are we experiencing right now? And what we are experiencing is the greatest movie ever made. Just flat out, this is absolutely the case. We are watching a movie, and the movie, essentially what you could say is that the movie, Mark, started the moment that that President Trump was elected on November 8th of 2016. Now, remember, everyone, this is so important for everyone to process and to understand. They never thought in a million years that she would lose. Everything was designed. The plan was signed, sealed, and delivered. Obama, to take away our weapons, to take away the Second Amendment right, to make America passive and weak, Part of Obama's presidency was to arm the rest of the world. Part of what you're seeing, and we saw throughout the world in 2020 with all of these Antifa rioters and how well funded they were and armed and supplied they were. Much of this was being done during the Barack Obama presidency. It's very important to note that this plan has been, as Mark has always laid out for you, is well laid out in advance. And so certain people were responsible for certain aspects of it. So Obama taking the weapons away from American citizenry, Obama putting weapons into the hands of the people that would cause the chaos necessary to keep everyone indoors, to aid the COVID, to keep the 5G network out of sight, out of mind, and then unleash this final plan for mankind. And everyone needs to remember, very important as you listen to this story, if Donald Trump had not won that election in November of 2016, we already would have been deep into a plan that was essentially, you could look at it, describe it as this: the Georgia Guidestones. They were in the process of weaning a new world for them where virtually all of us were going to be eliminated, and that the only ones that are going to be left, we were talking about this yesterday, a bit of a misunderstanding with a lot of people about who these 500 million leftovers of mankind would be. A lot of people have asserted that these would be the worker bees. The technology rift between what the Cabal have in secret and what we think is state-of-the-art, high-end technology, this rift is massive. It is massive. And it also relates to what Mark said on our last show, which is that we could not have done this ourselves. So if any of you are out there thinking that we don't need Donald Trump, that we don't need the Q team, that we have to do these things ourselves, things have gone so far in the opposite direction against us, and the technologies that they possess are so massively different, significant in comparison to what we think is real technology. We could not have won this war. It doesn't matter if
I just want to jump in there quickly, Charlie, to reiterate that point because it's so important. I made the comment on the last show that it really sticks in my craw to be looking towards a president and a military force to deliver humanity from this dreadful position that we find ourselves in. But what is the alternative? The alternative is we, the people, uniting, coming together, putting together a formidable enough force to put down this evil and counter it effectively. And as we've seen over the past few months, we cannot do that. We're just not capable of mobilizing ourselves in that way. We can see this now clearly. So the only hope lies from some kind of outside force, if there's to be any deliverance from what's planned for us at all. That's the terrible truth.
Mark, it absolutely is the terrible truth. And there's no two ways about this. Had this plan not been real, had this not been in existence, then we were going to go down for the count. And, there are those that feel like our ultimate destiny is to complete this reconnection to God in singularity, from whence we came in the beginning. And I do agree with that. I think there's inevitability, as Magenta Pixie says, I think that there's an inevitability that we would return there. But in terms of the time frame, had this been allowed to complete right now, we would literally have been talking hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years before we ever became strong enough again to be able, and I didn't even know what those circumstances would look like that would make us strong enough again to rise up out of what they were talking about. Because again, to make this very clear, the technology they possess is such that they don't need a workforce. They don't need manual labor. What they require is a food source. And as difficult as this is going to be for you to hear, their food source is us, and their food source in particular are our children. And while there are some of them that do participate in this process of eating us, that's more for the process of what they think is extracting the soul. Really what they do is they drink the blood. And so when you talk about a straw man identity, what they had planned for us literally is that we would be filled with straws and these vampires would be drinking from us. So as horrible as that is to hear, that is the case. That is absolutely the truth. That is absolutely what was coming for us. Those Georgia Guidestones are there for a reason. They're there in all those languages, and they lay out what was coming. And she was the conduit to achieve this. He, the 44th President Obama, who is a homosexual, his partner is a man. That's Michael Obama. He's a Baphomet. The real power in that relationship is through Michael. And it's as ugly as it sounds. It's as bad as it sounds. And so this is why a group of people in the military said something has to be done. And we were talking about this yesterday, Mark, and here is where I want to sort of start everything. It starts with the NSA being given access to highly classified, deep underground technologies that they did not know existed. The military always is on top of technology because that's often where technology is first unveiled, is in these wars. So the military typically is hands-on with advanced technology, but the Cabal has always been hands-off with the American military because there is a tradition that goes right back to the founding days of America that was very disloyal to the crown of England and very independent. And so they have always worked against, as often as they could, the U.S. military, because the U.S. military has this terrible, terrible tendency to do what is right, whereas other militaries just blindly capitulate. So when these technologies were released and unveiled to the military, they were slightly in shock because the kinds of technologies which are magnetically based were so powerful and so different from the electrical based world that they were dealing with, that they realized that they either had to get access to this technology or destroy this technology because there was not going to be an availability or a way of defeating these kinds of technologies in a conventional military fashion. So this was the key, this first awakening. Then, of course, the big thing was after 9/11 was that all of these spy technologies were rolled out. And the last people to the party, the last people to the dance to be able to get a piece of these spy technologies was the NSA and the military. They were the last ones. Virtually every other agencies, including even law enforcement agencies, were getting access to the spy technology before the military and the NSA. Again, the lack of trust between the Cabal and the military. But these are the two things, and this is when the tide turned, and everyone needs to wrap their minds around this. This was the fatal mistake of the Cabal as they unwittingly opened the door for the group of patriots within the U.S. military to hijack this essentially straight over the top, nothing anyone could do about it, crowning Hillary Clinton as the final president of the United States, because what was coming was going to be vastly different from anything that we could possibly imagine. So I guess the question that I wrote down to share with everyone with regard to Donald Trump that you hear from a lot of people in the truth committee, even still, which is very surprising to me, is that this question: if Trump is one of them, then why, when he announced himself to be nothing more than just one of 16 potential candidates for the Republican nominee for president, did the entire weight of the organized world attack him? And in particular, the mainstream media, and in a way that was vile and disgusting. And they singled Donald Trump out and let everybody else pretty much go. And from the beginning, it was an attack on Trump. And in so far, now remember, again, this is, no primaries had been run. And you had people like Nancy Pelosi or major actors, comedians coming out in the public and making comments like, one thing I will guarantee you is that Donald Trump will never, ever, ever be president. Donald Trump is a joke. Donald Trump, and they kept saying the same thing. Donald Trump will never be president, because they were trying to brainwash America into believing that he didn't have a chance. And they were wrong. And it is the best evidence for each and every one of you to know that Trump is absolutely not part of them. And when the whole truth comes out about Donald Trump's actual family background, especially on his mother's side, you're going to see that he comes from very humble roots, not from the kind of obscene wealth that most people seem to think is his legacy. It isn't. So I guess that's basically the great starting point for all of this today, is to note that where everything changed is when the NSA and the military were given access to highly classified, deep underground technologies that were magnetic-based, Tesla-based, and then were given access to the spying tracking technologies, because what they were then able to do is begin to formulate the beginnings of a plan. And then this plan is what we're going to talk about today, came to fruition on the night of November 8th, 2016. And then here's the other thing to keep in your mind for the rest of this show today. You hear this all the time because it is a code. Donald Trump's presidency hit the ground running. But what you need to know is that his presidency hit the ground running the moment that he was elected. Because in the United States, there's a difference between president-elect and sitting president. The election is the Super Tuesday, first Tuesday in November of the end of the 4-year election cycle. But the first day in office isn't until January 20th of the new year. And the former president is still president until noon of January 20th. And so Donald Trump became the sitting president on 12:01 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in Washington, D.C. on January 20th, 2017. So this is a key thing for everyone to remember today as well, is that the dates we're talking about where everything begins here is this time frame between November 8, 2016 and then January 20th, 2017. And you see, while he is president-elect, he's not the sitting president. And yet everything had to happen before he became the sitting president, because once he became the sitting president, then they would have been in defense mode, because he would have had his hands on the military, would have had his hands on the most enormous fighting force that the world has ever seen. So they would have been on the defense. And that's the key to what we're going to share with you today in this movie. So the movie starts on November 8th, 2016. Here's what you need to know about that day. To be able for Trump to win legally, they had to stop the election fraud that has been going on eternally. since technology was capable of turning things away from paper ballots into machinery and computer software, then you saw this massive shift in the political landscape of the United States of America. Here's something that I think some of you know now. To many, this might be a huge surprise, but states like California, which have always been traditionally conservative and have traditionally heavily voted for the Republicans because they are conservative families, which of course sounds crazy today because for 40 years now we've been told the opposite, and we've seen results that would counter what I've just said. Those results are all false. California has never stopped voting Republican in an overwhelming fashion. And it was the Clinton presidency, Bill Clinton, was the first time that the Democrats managed to wrest this enormous power, and the voting bloc and the delegate bloc that comes from California, and they were able to wrest it away from the Republicans. That gives the Democrats a chance to be a viable option, year after year or every 4-year cycle as a presidential possibility. So what I'm telling you is that they didn't win. Bill Clinton did not win. Nancy Pelosi, it was not winning her and all of these other now very, very famous, well-entrenched Democratic politicians in the state of California, like Dianne Feinstein from the Senate. She runs the Senate, Pelosi runs the House, and they're not winning these elections. And when you look at the history of their wins, they've been winning big. They began to win 70, 75, 77% of the vote. And they weren't. They were losing. So the elections have been rigged and faked for a long time. Big mistake, because the NSA, the military, were aware of this, and then they began to observe. People ask all the time, if they could do this, why didn't they do this sooner? Again, 9/11 needed to occur so that they were then given access to secret technologies that they were not aware of, that were kept away from them. And then 2, they needed time to be able to observe how they were getting away with what they were getting away with, such as rigging the elections. So that's the key. The movie starts November 8th, and here's the thing. The NSA and the United States military were out in full force, and they were out in cyberspace, aerospace, and then physical space as well, as they prepared to ensure a fair election. And so whereas the shenanigans were occurring later in the evening that we saw in the 2020 election to get a dead guy elected as the president of the United States, who, came out of his basement about 8 times during the election campaign, had a total of about 65 people show up to support him, suddenly had 80 million people turn up at the voting machines for him? No, not even close. If the full truth of the election results comes out, you will see a victory for Trump that will blow everyone away. The difference in votes, how little Biden actually got and how much Trump got, is incredible to even consider the difference between them. Trump won by such a landslide here in 2020.
Do you remember the trauma of election night when we were on your show? And I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning or something, and I was fully expecting to see Trump well in the lead, well on his way towards victory. And I was just horrified to look online and see that Biden was claimed to be leading in so many states. And it's not what we expected, and it was a very traumatic experience. And here we are, almost 8 weeks afterwards, and we're still waiting for resolution on that. I know it's got to come soon, because something's got to happen in January. But my God, we've really been put through the ringer in terms of having our nerves shredded and our patience tested to the fore these last few weeks, haven't we?
I agree 100%. And those people who along the way who have doubted from time to time and have strayed a little bit from believing in and trusting in the plan. There's no judgment. There's nothing but sympathy and empathy from Mark and from Colleen and myself, because we know that we've been put through the ringer. And remember, like Mark and I are both very prone to say, which is that none of us were told about this. None of us, like life, were given a manual to how any of this works and that anything was going on. So we're all having to do this on a leap of faith. And it's been, like I say, an incredible year, but it's a cycle. And so again, everything ties back to this election, this first election. And the key being is that they were so sure that Hillary was going to win. The amount of shenanigans that they were processing for that election were a fraction of what happened in 2020 with Biden. So the key thing that they do is with these machines is that late in the night, they get just before these certain swing states are called, then they get this influx through a back door electronically in the software that is an influx of, let's say, 400,000 votes, of which, say, 395,000 would be for Hillary Clinton and the Democrats, 5,000 would be for Donald Trump. And then that would be enough. That's always been enough to help the Democrat candidate to be able to just win these states and make it look like it was a dogfight, make it look like it was a close race and nobody can really say much of anything. And that's why you always see these states like Ohio or Wisconsin or Michigan so close to call, so very, very tough, close to call, because they're very good at cheating. That's what they do. That's who these people are, and that's what they do, is they lie and they cheat, and they're very good at it. So that was their plan. And on that night, what happened is that the military and the NSA were out in full force everywhere. And like I said, in cyberspace, aerospace, and in the physical space within polling stations as well. And they ensured an authentic vote. And that orange-haired guy who came from the entertainment world, who came from the billionaires club and came from private business and Trump Towers, he won the election because he struck a chord with Americans who were basically at their limit with what's been going on. Now, again, a lot of people, this surprised a lot of people because it's not what was being shown in the mainstream media, and hence the real disconnect that has been going on for essentially as long as Hollywood and television have existed. These have never, ever been about sharing entertainment to please you or to joy you. Entertainment is to entertain, is to hold. Mente is the mind. It's to enter within you and to hold and control your mind is what entertainment is. It has nothing to do with bringing you joy and pleasure or anything else. It's to own you. It's to go past control to owning you. And so there has been a false narrative. And I think that's one of the things, Mark, that is going to be the most difficult for everyone to process in the coming weeks and months after what happens here in January, is the fact that what most are going to realize is that for the last 40 years in particular, we have lived a complete subterfuge. We have lived a complete lie. Everything that has really been going on and is naturally occurring has been hidden, and then a false narrative has been pushed by the mainstream media. And this is why the election fraud was chosen to be the event to fight and to create this all-out war between Trump and the Republicans and Biden and the Democrats. And the reason being, everyone, is that it ties the big tech companies and the mainstream media in with the Democrats, which will then, when everything is revealed, tie them into China, which will then tie everyone into the Cabal. And then everyone will see the sinew and these roots and connections that take this entire aspect of the United States and, in fact, the entire world as a false construct working for a hidden group in a place called Venice, Italy. So the election was protected by the NSA and the military, and she lost. And then they went into a panic mode. But what occurred is sort of a planning stages as to what to do. And if everyone remembers, the days that followed Trump's win, when it was ratified, was George Soros publicly encouraging all of these people to riot, and then, of course, well-funded rioters then came out in a variety of locations across America. And for a while, it looked like there was going to be civil war on the streets, and that the election result was not going to be possible, because America looked like for a while that there was just going to be a form of civil war, and that Trump would have to call martial law.
This is what's predicted for the days ahead now, isn't it? A lot of people feel that civil war is going to break out the moment it gets announced, the moment the evidence is all presented to show that the election was stolen. Trump divides opinion so much, and he has so many people that hate him, that they're just not going to be able to accept the result that he's got another second term. So there could be some rocky days ahead as we stand now. Yes,
and you're that is exactly perfectly right. And the only thing that is preventing that from occurring, because you're exactly right, Mark, that's logically what would be the next step for even just, relatively, good Americans that have been Democrats for a long time, would be sort of the logical course of action for them. There's one thing, folks, that is waiting, that is going to be able to override all of it, and it's this. And that's a Trump card. And he's been holding on to the Trump card all along, and he's kept it really close to the vest or to the chest. And this Trump card is what is the ultimate solution to prevent that from coming. And we're going to reveal that at the end of the show today. The cliffhanger. That's the cliffhanger. What's the Trump card?
Even I don't know what that is.
No, I purposely held that back yesterday in our discussion about all of this. This is the secret Trump card that is going to allow peace to reign and very, very quickly. It's the secret. So that's why everything is the way it is. That's why things are just completely insane in 2020, because we have been watching a movie that is decades in the making and is 4 years in length. And so from November 8th, the election night of 2016, the movie began. And every day since, whether you're aware of it or not, or whether they've released all of it or not, the movie has been playing out. Eventually, we will see everything. But for now, we're only seeing bits and pieces. And the other thing to consider as we go through this story now in earnest is this. To achieve their goals, they went to the end of the story first. The title of the show today is Cutting Off the Head of the Hydra. And that's where John F. Kennedy or Abraham Lincoln or Adolf Hitler were unsuccessful in taking down the deep state, the cabal, and where Trump has been successful is that you have to take the head of the serpent off. You have to slay the dragon in the beginning, because if you simply expel them from your country, as Germany discovered, then they simply surround you. And then they begin to pull the noose in again on you, and it gets tighter and tighter and tighter until they snap it shut. and they can paint the picture any way they want, and they can create support for them and hatred, absolute, utter hatred against you, because they own the media. The media has never been about the truth. It's about controlling a mandate. It is not a public institution. These are privately owned agencies that work for a singular goal, and that is to allow the few to rule the many. And the few, as we're about to find out here, are these 13 bloodline families. And I'm going to read them out, and I think ultimately, eventually, that these are going to be commonplace, known. And I want everyone to know there's a lot of these confusing lists that are out there about who the enemy is, who the Cabal is, and you see all these kinds of names like the Kennedys, and so therefore they must be in it and stuff. No, these are all faked lists. This list is very difficult to find, actually, even though I've shared it ad nauseum. It's a very difficult list to find. But these are the 13 bloodline families. Now, people will say, Charlie, if these indeed are the Phoenicians and these are the bloodline of the Canaanites, Cain, who was cast out by God of the Holy Land for his evil against Abel, his brother, and the plan for what he had for his father Adam and the mother Eve, which was despicable. When he was cast out of the Holy Land, how come they all have Italian names? And here's the thing you need to know about these people. They are chameleons, and they are rats, and they exist underground because they always feel that people are watching them. And of course, that's because they're liars, and that's because they're cheats, fakes, and phonies. And it's liars that are always thinking that people are lying to them. People who are honest can be fooled at times by liars because we don't consider that the average person would be lying to us. We take people at face value. They don't.
A lot of that going on this year.
That's right. That's
With
right.
a lot of broadcasters in the alternative realm as well, I feel, have been taking people in because our kinds of audiences are by their very nature trusting, and we don't imagine that people are out to do us harm by telling us mistruths. But a lot of people have come unstuck by a lot of unscrupulous people this year. There's been all kinds of speculation and comments and opinions put out there. It's been a difficult one to navigate.
Exactly, Mark. And again, always in the realm of fear, isn't it? Always fear, fear, fear. And the stuff that even recently that has been coming out is almost criminal, how it plays upon people's fears. At the end of the day, we are mankind. And as the kindly man, we're honest. And therefore we're trusting. It's the very nature of who we are. And it's the answer of what we must be moving forward. We cannot be these jaded individuals that just think everyone is out to get us and lying. It's just one of the reasons why society has been shaped the way it's been shaped is to beat that trust out of us. And we have to get back to that. We do, because that's the way we are, and that's how we have to function with one another, is trusting one another. So the 13 bloodline families, the Phoenicians, who are the Cabal, who are the enemy of this story, and who changed their names so that there's nothing to see here, and who set themselves up on the island of Venice, which is a ship at sea, and they've literally shaped the island of Venice pointing towards Rome, which is their base of power on the land. But their true base of power is Venice. And the reason is because it exempts them from all punishment by God in their mind, because they are not subverting the godly laws of the land. They are simply a pirate ship upon the seas. And if people choose to believe their lies, that's on us. So That's how they think all of this. They're absolved.
I think they've got a shot coming there. If they think they've cheated karma, they've cheated judgment by the creator, by their little tricks and their little tactics there, I think they've got a shot coming on when their time comes. I think they might have misjudged that one.
You're 100% right, Mark. They have not absolved themselves of anything. And when you create a system that attacks children from birth, when we are completely prone, that is the definition of being prone. When we come out of perfection, which is the mother's womb, into hell, and then everything they do to us from that moment forth is a lie and it's hell, then that's not fair at all. That's not goodly at all. That's not godly at all. That's not legal at all. Everything that they have done is unlawful. It is unlawful against God's laws, and they will.
Same with the Maritime Admiralty law system that they've set up as well is another way of them, as they see it, cheating their rightful judgment. But it's not going to cut that way. You can't use trickery and deception to con people into consenting with a system when they don't understand what they're really getting involved with. So again, another example of them misjudging the situation. But then they are sick, demented psychopaths. So I guess we should make some allowances for that.
And again, brilliantly said, Mark, because these people are sick. They are sick. And whether you agree with what they believe in or not, it doesn't matter. It's what they believe in. It's what they believe in. And this process of which I've done shows with Mark about this raising of the chrism oil within us, which is this Christ consciousness that we must rise to heaven upon earth, which is our head. This natural, beautiful process that Colleen and I dedicate our lives to, and that we teach and share with others, and that is very, very doable. They have no interest in doing this. They want the results of this process of the Christ consciousness, but they don't want to do the work themselves because they don't want to go anywhere near God. And so what they have done instead is to forcibly extract it from our children. So what are we learning? They're taking the adrenals, okay? So adrenals, for life-giving properties reasons. When you torture a sentient life form to the point of death, the body is attempting, the mind and the body are attempting to stay alive. So enormously powerful secretions are released into the system to protect the body, to put the body into shock so that it doesn't feel the horror of the pain, and then to protect systems so that these systems can be put on bare minimum and that they can survive. It's the human body and mind are miracles. And again, that's why education exists, to dumb us down and take us away from the fact that we are absolute miracles of creation. This is no fluke of some evolutionary storyline. This is elegant design beyond description by a creator, a golden creator who has created the golden child, which is what we are. We're magic. We're pure magic, and they know it. And that's why they take this pure magic from us, from the purest of us, which is children. And then that's why it goes all the way into abortion. And this whole push through the Cabal and the Democrats to be able to legalize abortion because they want your babies. These babies were not being terminated. These babies were being taken and kept alive and being brought. Because this is the purest form of the substances, this adrenochrome, for these vampires who exist by drinking our blood. But remember, the reason I brought that up is, again, it starts with the adrenals for those properties, but what they really want are those secretions of the pineal gland and the pituitary gland. So the third ventricle of your brain, and that is the magic mind. And that's what they want. This is divinity. And they want divinity, they want eternal life, they want long life, but they don't want to go and do the work, and they don't want to go through God. So they take it by force. And again, like Mark said, they think that they're immune to all of this. They're absolutely not. And the weight of all of this is coming crashing down on all of them. And we're going to, again, lay this all out today. So this is the background. This is the movie. This is the story. The enemy that we're fighting against and is this 13 bloodline families. These are the descendants of Cain of the Holy Land. These are the Canaanites who have changed their names and are now the Venetians, who were the Phoenicians, who are the Canaanites. And they are the house of Borgia, the house of Breakspear, the house of Somalia, the house of Orsini, the house of Conti, the house of Chigi, the house of Colonia, the house of Farnese, the house of Medici, the house of Gaetani, the house of Pamphili, the house of Este, and the house of Aldobrandini. These are the 13 bloodline families. Don't let anyone tell you any different. Those are the 13 bloodline families. They changed their names because they're in Venice, so they need to sound Italian. And this is why...
Don't go hating Italians.
That's right, exactly. And this is why history at a certain point was dominated by Italy, was dominated by Venice, and was dominated by Rome, because they moved the base of their operation from Phoenicia to Venice and then controlled Rome. So this is why history is played out that way, because they're the ones writing history. Remember, Nostradamus was not some guy who was in deep meditation going, yes, and then the Kennedys will come to power in the United States in the 1960s. No, Nostradamus is a guy sitting in the corner going, can you guys slow down? I can only write so fast. Okay, so wait a minute. Okay, Abraham who? And when was this again? And where? The United States, huh? Okay, Abraham Lincoln. And that's these people who can tell the future because they write the future. That's why. That's why. These demons orchestrate everything out in long-standing plans. This plan has been well orchestrated, and therefore it needed to be well orchestrated by the Q team. Okay, let's continue. So, Trump wins. The cabal and their minions are in panic mode, as are the mainstream media. They're determining what they need to do to protect themselves come the transfer of power on January 20th of 2017. And in doing so, they let their guard down because they made the false assumption that they were in power. Trump won the election, but he does not gain power until he's the sitting president, and that would be at 12:01 p.m., just after noon on January 20, 2017. That's
Did they still think they could keep him out in that interim period then?
Absolutely, because again, they control these transition teams. So what happens is that when a president is elected, then you have representatives from the CIA, representatives from the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the representatives from the Pentagon, the representatives from all these different aspects of the government. They sit and they have these meetings with the new president-elect to slowly bring this president up to speed as to what's going on, where it's going on, and why it's going on. And so while they were in this process of delaying, and then now we know that they were also in the process of creating these specious plans to try, to try and turn this into Russiagate, and that Trump is an agent of the Russians, and that Putin essentially won the election, and that Trump is just his go boy, and wow.
So you would think then that there would have been multiple attempts to assassinate Trump in the weeks leading up to his inauguration in January 2017, and then when he took office for the past 4 years.
Yeah.
At any point in the 4 years, if he'd been taken out, it would have served the cabal. So presumably there must have been multiple foiled attempts to take him out and blame it on some mind-controlled lone nut.
Yeah. So what we were told is that plans, not necessarily formulated, but plans that they're now aware of, total over 1,000. So there's been over 1,000 plans from the moment that he announced as a potential candidate to run for the Republican nomination for president in 2016 until now, that there's over 1,000 plans. That doesn't necessarily mean, again, that all of them were put into fruition, but that there were over 1,000 plans. So this process to keep Trump alive is very key. And this is why I don't think this will be a shock to everyone, but maybe to some it will. But this is why Donald Trump himself looks different from time to time. And that's why sometimes he's heavier set, sometimes he's a little shorter and wider, is because he has body doubles as well. Remember, this is a process that they created from the moment that Hollywood stars were elevated to a certain level and that famous people reached, certain levels of fame. Then this process of creating body doubles started. And so virtually everyone in Hollywood has a body double. Virtually every politician of significance has a body double. It's one of the first things that these people do to protect themselves. And when they feel like they're going into the lion's den, they'll put their doubles in their place. And you've seen a lot of Hollywood movies over the years that have been hinting at this. And then there's been a couple of movies that have been out and out about that these body doubles have existed. And in that one movie,
these doubles must be very brave, or they must be compromised in some way if they're putting themselves in situations where they know they could be assassinated because somebody thinks they're the person they're playing. It's a big risk.
Well played, access to all the perks of these minions, and I think we know what that means, and well compromised, yeah. So often what they're looking for are people who bear a resemblance, who are on the dark side of things in life anyways, and then they reach out to these people and give them an opportunity of nirvana. How would you like to be rich and famous and to hang out with the greatest celebrities in the world? Where do I sign up, right? Where do I sign up? And in a disadvantaged economic reality, people fall for this all the time. So I think it's a relatively easy sell for them. So this is sort of the background, is that they are panicking. They're having meetings. There was even one thought or one strategy that they didn't obviously go forward with, but it was to create an all-out invasion against the United States by combined military forces around the world in the name of trying to rescue Americans, and then have this insurrection movement within America because Donald Trump was so evil. It's just incredible because he hasn't done anything at all. He's just sort of this famous person. And here's, again, all of this insanity about Donald Trump and why Donald Trump is just such a danger to America in the mainstream. How? He hasn't done anything. And, folks, again, I need to make this reference to you. It's the exact same thing for Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler had said very little and done very little, but the moment that he became the president-elect or the prime minister of this new Germany in late 1932, the same thing. The rhetoric from the Cabal around the world was, this is the most evil man in the world and that he must be taken out and this whole country needs to be destroyed. The parallels are undeniable. And again, John Kennedy got a lot of that. And then as history is properly told, you're going to find out that Abraham Lincoln got a lot of that as well. So you'll find out what the connections are uniformly between these men over time.
If you want to know who the good guys are, look at who's getting bad press. That seems to be the rule of thumb.
I guarantee it. I guarantee it, Mark, and we don't have time to go into it today, and it's a controversial subject because certain people have been made to look like the worst demons in the world, but it isn't true. Nothing in history is true. Everything we've been told is a lie. So then what they did is they chose to step back. They chose a different route. And as I said to Mark yesterday, they chose what's called the Potomac two-step. The Potomac is the river that runs through Washington, D.C., and the Potomac two-step is this backstabbing dance that Washington politicians have done for a long time. And so what they were going to do is they were going to sling mud at Trump in the first months of his presidency and impeach him. And that was the plan, that they would get him. And, people will say, yeah, but none of it was true. But that you need to understand about the Potomac two-step has nothing to do with the truth. They just sling shit until it sticks. And that's how it works in Washington and in the most political locales, is that it doesn't have to be true. You just have to get enough people to believe in it, that it's true, and then it's the truth. So that was the plan, and it's their mistake. They took a step back. They planned to do these Obama gates and Flynn gates and all of these things to pull down Donald Trump piece by piece, fabric by fabric, and tear him down that way. Big mistake. So the Trump team, the Q team, hit the ground running. Okay, let's get into this story. What happened? On November 9th, a meeting was called between Trump, all of the major players that were in this formulation of the Q team, which is a liaison between two worlds, and then the NSA and the military. And so what they then discussed and described is that when would be the best time that gave them the greatest chance for success to take down the head of the Hydra, to cut off the head of the Hydra, to take down the beast, because the only way you can win and do this is you have to take down the Cabal. These minions are not powerful. They're simply told what to do, and they do what they're told to do. So the Barack Obamas of the world are not the danger. They're evil, for sure, and they create a lot of evil, but they are not the problem. The Cabal in Venice is the problem, and Venice had to be taken down. And so here's what they decided. That Christmas Eve, December 24th, 2016, they would all be home, and they would least expect what was coming. And what was coming was payback. And this was for all of us. This is for Mark Devlin. This is for all of you that have been put through hell, and everything that's happened to our children, everything that's happened to our parents and our grandparents, and the hell that we've been forced to live under. This is for all of us. And they created a plan. Now, how did they know that these 13 bloodline families would be home on Christmas Eve? We're supposed to be celebrating Christ Mass, which is this miracle that's taking place in the sky above us and within us, which is this birth of the Christed one, the Christ energy, Jesus Christ within us. And this is beautiful. This is virtuous. This is pure. And this is goodly, and this is godly. And what they do at this exact time of the year on December 24th, it's actually a four-day process that starts on December 21st and runs to Christmas Day. But what they do is they have a very, very dark, evil blood ritual that is designed to counteract this enormous effect of Christ Mass and Christ consciousness rising within us and rising within the collective consciousness of humanity. And they create acts of extreme evil. And to be able to do this, they're underground. So they're in Venice, but they're underground in Venice. They're below the waters and underground. They have a whole nother world. That's another thing to just quickly touch upon, as I shared with Mark. What's coming in the reveal when we learn about all of this is that we're not just talking about some tunnel systems and the occasional deep underground military base. When you give these people monopoly money for 100 years, they can create anything. And what they've created underneath the earth is an entire other world. It is cities. It is everything, because they have lighting sources that are coming from this other technology. So it's a whole another world that exists beneath us. And you need to wrap your minds around that. They exist under the ground, and they come up to control their minions above the ground. But that's where they hide. That's where they protect themselves, is under the ground. That's why they like Switzerland so much, because of the Alps, the mountains. And it gives them an underground basis going in like a spider's web into all of Europe. They're tentacles of this evil Hydra that comes out and grabs power from everywhere. So they were occupied on December 24th with this very evil blood ritual.
Let me just mention at this point, Charlie, that date, Christmas Day of 2016, is when George Michael turned up dead. He was discovered dead in bed by his lover, Fadi Fawaz, reportedly. And a lot of people that have looked into it feel there could be some kind of ritual sacrifice element to it. But it's interesting. You're talking about Christmas Eve going into Christmas Day 2016. And that was the date of George Michael's demise.
Yeah. Yeah. And Mark, you pointed out something very important yesterday as well. And that is in December of 2016, there were these anomalies that were occurring in and around Venice. And people were attributing them to earthquakes, but there were just some odd things that were going on in and around Venice in Italy at that time in Christmas of 2016. There's a reason. We're going to get into that in just a sec. So now they've made the plan. The plan is that they're going to strike against the Cabal, and it was going to be Christmas Eve, and then this is it. The fate of all of us. Whether we didn't even know this. We went to bed that night and we put our heads down on our pillows, and our fates were hanging in the balance of this team. Here's how it worked. There are 13 palaces in Venice, and each palace had its own team, and each team had its own head, and each was a separate op. So you need to sort of recognize that what happened that night wasn't just one op, it was 13 ops. And so each of these 13 ops had to succeed. They had to succeed because if you let one of these families get away, they know where everything is. They know where the underground bases are. They know where the safest place for them is. They know where their technology is. They know where to go to get back at those that have done this. So it's an incredible evening. You just need to wrap your minds around this because all 13 of the families had to be taken down. So this is where we sort of find ourselves. And now the question is that many of you must be asking yourselves at this point is that where does the authority come from? Is this just a renegade act, or does this act of the ages, does this have any kind of legal basis within this current system of law for the military to do this? And the key is yes. And I was explaining this to Mark yesterday, and here's how it works. Because of 9/11, once again, they will always go too far, and they will always end up spiting themselves in their desire for ultimate control. They'll always lose. The left brain, this left-hand path, these demons, these anti-God, demonic, satanic souls will always lose because they'll always end up spiting themselves because they go too far. 9/11, it was their downfall. They didn't realize this at the time. They went too far. They made enemies and they exposed themselves on 9/11. So in the weeks following 9/11, the puppet president, George Walker Bush, created this massive document in the night, right? Every congressman and senator still remembers overnight this gigantic document being dumped on their doorstep, and they said, you have to vote on this in a week, and if you don't vote for this, you're a traitor. Wow. And so none of them read it. And it was the Patriot Act. And here's what the Patriot Act does. It gives the President of the United States the ability to subvert the Constitution in any moment that a clear and present danger exists to the sovereignty of the United States of America from foreign adversaries or domestic traitors. They wrote this. They did this to themselves. Trump and the military are acting on the fuel that these demons did to themselves because they were so sure that they were in control. They were so sure of their plan. Clintons, to the Bushes, to the Obamas, to Hillary, to her, to it, whatever she is. That was always the plan. They were so sure in their plan. So the Patriot Act is their undoing, and they couldn't see this. So that's what happened. And what the military did in the days before, you talk about whether you believe in God or not, there has to be a lot of God that's working to ensure that President Obama listened to his military advisors and enacted the Patriot Act in the days before December 24th, 2016, because there were some odd things happening in and around Venice. Everybody in the Cabal, the minions, they know what Venice is. They know what Venice represents. So Obama, under the Patriot Act, evoked a section of it and created, once again, military rule, martial law, and this was it. Then the green light was given. The plan was set. The planes were in motion. The troops were being sent. They went to Germany first. They came and surrounded the area. Each had their own sort of base that they took off from in and surrounding Venice, and they all came in from different directions, and they all had their individual targets, 13 targets. The plan was set, and then it happened. And I want to everyone to think back to this movie, and I think most of you know that I have gone out of my way to show you that Kevin Costner is not one of these Hollywood demons, and that Costner's movies, from Dances with Wolves through everything that he's put his own money up to do, have constantly been telling this story, like Waterworld, which was telling you the Maritime Admiralty law, and that, the Phoenicians of the sea, the pirates of the sea are in control, and then The Postman, and how the U.S. Constitution was literally hidden within the Postmaster General's office, and that we've been living a corporation. The United States from 1871 onwards has been a corporation. It hasn't been a republic until Trump and the Q team came back in. I mean, Costner's movies are foreshadowing all this stuff. Okay. In 2001, he did the movie 13 Days, which shows President Kennedy and his brother Bobby essentially being alone with their childhood friend, which is the character that Kevin Costner played in the movie, and that they were surrounded by enemies and everyone trying to get them into this war through Cuba with Russia, the Cuban Missile Crisis. And there is an incredible scene in that movie, and I wanna just bring it up here right now because this moment had to have existed. And 107, in one of his presentations about 4 months ago, literally talked about this night in Venice, and he talked about this kind of speech, and he talked about this necessity for having to win, and that failure was not an option, because the result, we would have been exterminated. So in the movie, the American Joint Chiefs of Staff pushed President Kennedy into another one of these protocols, and that is, before they make a determination of what to do, they have to send another jet plane to take one more run over Cuba and to verify or not with these cameras whether the missile silos were operational or not. And so this Air Force colonel was asked to do this mission, and before he left, Kevin Costner's character Billy O'Donnell from the White House team with the two Kennedy brothers contacted this Air Force colonel and said to him that you cannot fail, your mission must succeed. And he said, "Well, sir, thank you very much." And he said, "I'll do everything I can." But he said, "You do know that there will be eyes on me, and I will attract fire." And he said, "I can't guarantee you that I won't get shot or that I won't get shot down, but I'll try my best." And Kevin Costner goes, "No, you're not hearing me. You cannot fail. You cannot get shot down. You can't. Because if you do, it will set off a series of events that will end in the destruction of mankind as we know it. You cannot fail." And so what I want all of you to know is that this is the speech likely that President Trump gave to everyone in those wee hours the night before, saying to everyone that failure is not an option. Because if we fail, and 107 made this so clear in his presentation, their families would have been wiped out immediately, right away. And then they would have moved quickly with the Georgia Guidestone protocols, and there would have been this FEMA camp reality where we were being taken away and then just virtually exterminated in mass numbers, leaving these 500 million blood donors, okay? So this is the reality. They could not fail. If they failed, then we all were going down for the count. So
and that's going to make one hell of a movie one day. The telling of that story.
It is, and they've made it clear that they're going to. They made it clear that they recorded everything, so that there's going to be real footage from this event, and that it is going to become the movie of all time, and in particular this night. So with everything hanging in the balance, they struck. And now remember, they struck through the military, not President Trump, because he was the president-elect, but he was not the sitting president. This was a military operation, and you need to know that, because in terms of what's coming tomorrow and the next day, what's coming for January 6th and this massive peaceful march that President Trump has called, and then in preparation for something being in place at 12:01 p.m. on January 20th, that it has to be military. It has to be military, because the military is what brought this into operation, and it's the military that needs to end this. So everything that has happened is all part of this movie to show you that the Supreme Court is compromised. All the stuff coming out about Chief Justice Roberts right now is showing you that the highest court of the land is completely compromised. Every state is completely compromised. So there's no other alternative. They have to go through the military. The military started this with this operation, and the military needs to complete this at the end. That's where we're headed. We're days away. Don't be shocked or surprised by what's coming. It has to be this way. It has to.
The wait has been absolute torture for people that have been following this one closely, because we've had various dates given. Oh, this is going to happen, and hold tight. It's coming next Tuesday. It's coming next week. And the cans got kicked further and further down the road. And I think it's taken many of us by surprise how long this whole thing is being dragged out. But it has to reach a conclusion soon. We're getting into January. It's there's got to be a resolution by the 20th at the latest, as you said. But I think the early days of January, at last, after this mind-numbingly torturous wait, we're going to see some things start to happen.
That's right. Exactly, Mark. And remember, for everyone who's listening in the rest of the world, it has to happen in the United States first. There's a whole reason to all of this because the United States was always their prized possession of what they needed to control. So it's always been that way. So for all of you who are waiting as best you can in the United Kingdom, you know that your freedom will be coming soon. Because again, these three cities, Washington, D.C., London, and Rome, are these three independent worlds unto themselves, and they have to be dealt with first. So what's coming for London will be coming very soon, and the same for Rome after what occurs. But it has to start in the United States first. Until it happens in the U.S., it will not happen in any other nation. It won't. But once it does, it will be like dominoes. So once one country falls, that's what is just people will never forget this, because the moment that the United Kingdom falls and goes back into the hands of the people, watch what happens the next day with France, and watch what happens the next day with the North countries. They're all going to collapse, right?
Isn't it interesting that many of these nations you've just mentioned have been placed back into very harsh, severe lockdowns in the last few days? So in the UK yesterday, we had Boris Johnson popping up and saying, oh, back into tier 4, folks, and everything's locked down again and closing down the schools. And yet the same thing has been happening. I've had contact from people in Italy and Austria, Germany. All these nations are getting locked down once again at this time, all at the same time. It's as if it's in preparation for something now.
That's right.
And it hasn't happened that way.
Yeah, and I said to you yesterday, for everyone, thank you for bringing that up, Mark, because everyone to just be patient with this last round. And yes, they hijacked everything. Christmas now at the last second when he said he wouldn't, then at the last second, and then like Mark said, with what came yesterday or the day before.
They just screwed up New Year's Eve. Basically, they've put a ban on New Year's Eve parties. You can't celebrate, so they've ruined everything this year, traumatized us. But it's got to be the home run now. It's got to be.
It has to. And also notice how these little rats always do this at the last second, right? So Boris Johnson even said that I would never take Christmas away from you and your families. And then it's like, I'm taking Christmas away from you and your families. Rats, liars. That's why it's a movie. It has to play this way. He has to be exposed for what he is. Liar.
Trump even criticized Johnson on Twitter. He said, the cure shouldn't be harsher than the cause, or words to that effect. Yep. He wasn't happy with the way Johnson was handling the situation in the UK.
Yeah, no. And of course, it's just all the movie, and it has to play out. And that is a message to the British people saying that America is watching, that they know that they're all in with what happens with Great Britain. It has to become great again, and it can only become great again when these demons of the minions of the Cabal are no more. And so you're high on the list. They're coming for London, and therefore all of England and all of the United Kingdom right after. So the plan is in place. The pieces are set, and it will move, and it will move fast, but it has to start in the States first. It has to. So with this plan, again, failure was not an option. And then through the mercy of of God, all 13 special ops worked. All 13 homes were secured. They were given, I don't know the details on this, but they were given, the troops, the special op troops on the ground were given the green light to shoot on sight. Shoot first, ask questions later. This plan had to work. It was hopefully to capture as many people as possible alive, but not to risk the outcome. So all of the special op troops were given the order to shoot on sight, and because they had to win. So just so you know that aspect as well.
Do we know if they captured anyone, or was everyone just taken out?
They did. There actually ended up being a mass capitulation, and that actually was really only the outer guards, and most were taken out by special op tactics, very silently and quietly, to be able to gain access into the perimeter of these fortresses. And so there was a lot less killing than I think they thought was going to be necessary. So yes, Mark, they took virtually everyone alive, and they interrogated everyone. And so it has just been this process of getting as much knowledge from them, information from them, as can be trusted. So they're liars. And so the process is you're trying to compare what you're hearing from one family of liars to another family of liars to try to get to the bottom. Okay? So at the end of the day, what they were most concerned about were two things. One, these access to technology sites, these locations where their advanced technology existed, and two were sites for children. Where were they collecting? Where were these major routing centers? Where were these massive adrenochrome centers being done? And it shouldn't surprise anyone that Switzerland and what exists under Switzerland and CERN is all about this deep science, learning to master this process of extracting the adrenals and the pineal and pituitary glands and processing this substance to make it as pure and as potent as possible. So those were the two major concerns. Okay, so they've taken down the head of the Cabal. Now, the next thing that happened is that the minions are wondering why, over the next few days, as we approach New Year's, why they're not getting their phone calls, and that their regular contacts from these Jesuits, which are the go-between the 13 families and the minions, are the Jesuits. The Jesuits, you need to know this, the Jesuits run virtually everything. The world is run by a mafia. The Jesuits are the mafia. Remember, who are the Jesuits? That's the order of Jesus. So how much do they fear the power of Jesus Christ and Christ consciousness within us? They put that in the hands of the Jesuits, and the Jesuits, there's no darker, more evil, disgusting, vile force in the history of mankind than the Jesuits. They are it. They're scum of the earth. And they've been in charge, and they've ruled the world in a hateful, ugly way for 100 years. That's the fact. That's the reality. So when these Jesuits were not making their calls, when the Jesuits were not contacting the minions with what to do, the minions began to panic. What's going on? How come? And then they began to make calls, and everyone was now in a full-out panic, because clearly something happened. Clearly something happened. And then this is essentially what has played out. Now, the Trump team acted, and the military acted very, very quickly. So in the days after the takedown of the Cabal, what happened is that mass arrests took place. Okay, so then this is the next big thing. So from late December through January and February and into early March, as quickly as they could, was this concentrated earth-wide effort to arrest all notable minions connected to the Cabal. So this was virtually every politician in the world, every corporate head or heads of all of these major corporations. This is all of the leaders of all of these international agencies like the United Nations, like the EU, like the World Health Organization, everything, UNICEF, the Red Cross,
the theme of mass arrests is something that David Wilcock has been talking about for years, and Benjamin Fulford. I remember those guys back in 2007, 2008, that kind of time frame, on Red Ice Radio, talking about, mass arrests are imminent of Catholic priests and royals and politicians. And I took that with a pinch of salt, and of course it didn't come to pass at that time. So do you feel those guys had some advanced knowledge of this narrative now, all those years back, or was it just an unlucky guess which had no foundation to it? Because the theme of what they were talking about all the way back then is the same as what you're saying now, but like 12, 13 years have passed in between them.
Yeah, the thing is that the Cabal have always been aware that this was going to happen to them. They've always been aware that an attempt through this they thought they had stopped it with John F. Kennedy, that this white-hatted angel would come along and attempt to bring them down, and this would...
In the Wilcock version, it was Chinese triad troops that were supposed to be undertaking the arrests.
That's right. So the question, and I don't want to cast aspersions, that's not my job to here, but the question is that I think that they did probably have some inkling as to what there was a plan in place. But the question is, from what side? What side? Because the Cabal has long been aware and preparing for a Christ-like figure, and through the power of God to bring them down. Because they felt that was the only way they could be brought down, was by acts of God, which is why they do what they do, which is always to offer us consent. They have to get our consent, which absolves them, and then they're not fearing the punishment from God. So the question would be with the people that you mentioned is, where did they hear this from? Did they hear this from the Q team? Unlikely, because what we have come to learn firsthand is that this is a closed off organization. That this is tight.
For anyone new to you and your information that might have just discovered my channel or your channel or our work, an important point to emphasize here is that you don't have any inside intel to the Q team. And as far as you're concerned, all these talking heads on YouTube, none of them do, because they don't share information in that way. So everything that you put out is what you've pieced together yourself from information that's available, that's in the public domain, it's on the internet, but you're doing your Sherlock Holmes act and just gathering all the evidence and coming up with these conclusions. That's the process that you use, for anyone that might be wondering.
Yeah, that's 100% so, Mark, and it's always been the case. Now, the thing about the Q team is that this has always been about a grassroots movement. They have not reached out to big names and celebrities and whatnot to to kind of lead the way, or to give them position in that sense, or to be their messengers. Really hasn't been that way. It's been key players within the movement. So you see people like, Lynn Wood, who's, one of Trump's legal team, and now he's tweeting and posting in a very meaningful way and stuff. So there are actual people that are attached to things. But what they've always done and wanted is this grassroots movement. So when there are those of us that have really taken this seriously and have put the work into it and have collected the clues that they've put out there, especially through the Q posts. The Q posts are very, very, very important. They are so layered with coded messages. And you really can't get most of the messages until more messages come out, until more events play out. And then suddenly you're going, wow, that reminds me of a post from 2 years ago. Then you need to go back to that Q drop look at it, and then suddenly it starts to make sense. But it didn't make sense at the time because that part of the story had not been revealed. So it's just an ongoing process. That's why it's taken me this long. We're at the end of this process. We're at the end of 2020, and we're doing the show on New Year's Eve. And I couldn't have done it sooner because it has taken so much time and effort and research to be able to piece these things together. And then what you do is, what I've done is I've put certain theories, positive theories out there in certain channels. Now, that's just social media. So that's within certain people on Twitter, certain people on Facebook. And what you do is you posit these theories, and then you just kind of see what the response is. And so all along through this one, I've received very, very positive, but not confirmations. They'll never confirm any of these things, but very positive responses to it. And then some information, a whole series of things were released about 3 weeks ago for everyone. They just put it out there for everyone. Most people wouldn't know what these things refer to or related to, but if you've been doing the research and the work, then you know. So essentially, these things are put out there to help those of us that are doing this work. And these are the last pieces, Mark, that I needed to be able to say that there's a show here. There's an incredibly important show here, and I can piece together how all of this has gone on and how all of this works. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. It's a heck of a process.
Such a world of difference between what the average normie has been experiencing this year, scurrying around in a mask, terrified that some mutant strain of a virus could attack them any moment. Clouds of it as they walk down the street, and believing that their government just wants to keep them safe because they're lovely people. They just don't want them to come to any harm. That's the normie's view of what's been going on. Contrast that with what you're saying has really been going on this year. And for any truther or alternative researcher, we know there's so much more to this than a virus, a pandemic, which isn't one. When the truth of what's really been going on and what this scamdemic has really been all about breaks surface, millions, if not billions of people are going to literally lose their minds.
Yeah.
Their whole world is going to be shattered. And that's got to be coming. That's got to be coming soon.
Yeah. And again, I think that another reason why this podcast probably very naturally only happened today is because a whole weight of events needed to occur for people to be able to just process what you and I are sharing today. The fact that your reality has played out in a literal movie for the last 4 years, and no single person anywhere on this earth has been exempt from this movie is stunning information.
But none of what's being done is going to have any real value because it won't be universally recognized unless the poison and the venom and the lies of the mainstream media is brought to an end, because so many people will only believe something if it comes through the mainstream media. And if the mainstream media isn't covering it, they won't give it any credibility at all. So there has to be a mechanism for taking down the mainstream media machine, the mind control, or everything is doomed to failure because people just won't accept that it's been happening. They won't have any comprehension of what's been going on, what was at stake, and what's to come.
Yeah, again, 100% accurate, Mark, and that's why the election fraud is what they chose to do. So what Mark was saying earlier about, we did that big live show on election night, and Mark was part of the show. And when Mark woke up early to be on the show, he, was shocked to see. But, like we said going into it, there were always two possibilities for that election. One that would be, this gift to all of the Trump supporters and Q team over the years for all the work and dedication that they've done. And this would be this inauguration of goodliness and godliness into the world. or it was going to be used as the vehicle to complete the takedown. And like Mark said, if the takedown does not involve the mainstream media, then there's no real takedown, because you're just going to continue to have a group of people who will just live in complete denial to everything that's been going around them, and then blame it on a renegade, crazed, lunatic president that's just desperately trying to stay in power. But that's why at the end of the show today, I'll be unveiling the Trump card, because this is the Trump card that is the answer to that reality. Because that's a great point to bring up, and there is an answer, and it is the Trump card, and it's going to be the last card that will be played in this game, in this movie. So,
going out 2020 with a bang.
Yeah.
So it seems the best benefit, the best tool that Trump has on his side is the force of the military. But the best tool that the Cabal has is still the mainstream media, because they've got that propaganda, that mind control machine, and that's working wonders for them. And it has to go.
Yeah.
Like we just said.
Yeah, exactly. That these are the two opposing forces. And so what you see, everyone, is that their weapon has always been of the mind, right? That's what the mainstream media is. It's entertainment. That's why in all these words that deal with the media, it's always mente in Latin and Greek is mind. It's always about controlling your mind. World War III is the war for your mind. And hey, there's no way to defend, there's no way to deny that, or that theory that we just posited, because look at the coronavirus and the wearing of masks, and there's nothing. Again, go back to this, folks, and you can do your own research on it. In the year 2020, while they have all these statistics of people dying from the COVID, suddenly there's no cancer, there's no common cold, and there's no influenza. And the influenza numbers annually are greater than what they have lied about and expanded for the numbers of COVID. That just every single year, the influenza numbers are greater than this year's COVID. But this is a massive global pandemic, and there's been no incidents of cancer this year or so far, and the common cold or the influenza. No, it's just all COVID. So again, all you have to do is wrap your minds around that all of these other diseases have taken the year off because they're terrified of the COVID as well. So that's the great thing about what Mark has always shown. The COVID is so powerful that it scares other diseases, and it says, hey, get out of town. This is my game. This is my turf. Get out of here, cancer. I'm in charge.
Pneumonia. Now, let's just recap on the circumstances in which the COVID scamdemic was launched. So this was put out there by the Cabal as a smokescreen for all the stuff that was going on, so it could be concealed. And it was also their last-ditch, desperate attempt to control everyone and lock everyone down and introduce this Chinese-style communism, which has been sneaking in by the back door. Is that an accurate assessment of what you feel is going on? And then Trump and the Q team seized COVID as an opportunity that they could turn to their advantage and get all their work done under the cover of it.
Yeah.
Is that a fair assessment?
That, of course, is what it looked like when everything was playing out at the beginning of the year, and that's how we saw things at the beginning of the year. But now that you see the fullness and the wholeness and the richness of this plan, and that it's a 4-year-long movie, then that, of course, means that, yes, while this was the plan, should she ever lose, it's their sort of last-ditch effort plan, the fact of the matter is this had to be allowed to be unveiled by President Trump and the Q team. So
it's a teaser for what could have happened.
That's right. And again, so some people will hear that and go, I'm angry, I'm frustrated. Why would they do this? If what you say is true and they've taken control and power, they've cut the head of the Hydra off, then why in these last 4 years haven't we just had mop up and truth and coming together and peace of mind? And if there is such a thing as Nasara, and all of this wealth, if the Queen's gold has all been taken, for example, back into these treasuries, then why aren't we sharing some of this money and stuff? And these are all very, very valid points and very, very valid questions to be asking and to be considering. The fact of the matter is that we all have played a role in what's gone on. And it's through, now, it's all understandable because they attack us from birth. And our parents were in on it because they were attacked from birth. So ultimately, they're to blame, but we've played a role in allowing them the kind of power that they now have because we've just capitulated left, right, and center the whole way along. Every single year. It's just like with 9/11 and then what they did at the airports. That was a test for COVID and to see how far they could push us with us just accepting it. And I think they were in shock at how ready, willing, and able people were to allow themselves to be frisked. And remember, the people that they were hiring to play these roles in the airports to get in your face, and they were told to be as unpolite, aggressive, rude, and outright vile. They were hired on that basis. So there's no accident that airport security during the post 9/11 era has just been horrific. They were paid to be horrific by the cabal. It's pushing us as far as we can be pushed to a breaking point, and we didn't break. That's the thing. So they're going.
This year has been acted too. Yeah, another objection that people have to the scamdemic being allowed to unroll the way it has is the high body count that it's brought. We discussed this off air yesterday in our brief chat. The suicide count. How many people have just not been able to cope with the loneliness, the desolation of lockdowns, the trauma of how society has changed, how scary it is to see people scurrying about in masks. People have been taking their own lives because of this. Then there are people that have not been able to get surgery for other conditions because they're being turned away from hospitals. There's people that have lost their businesses, their livelihoods, everything they've ever worked for. They've just seen crumble and fail through no fault of their own. And it seems that's a lot of collateral damage that's had to be factored into the thing. It's very unfortunate that this has happened. But just to play devil's advocate for a minute, I threw a few of these questions into the last show that we did. I just wanted to read out an excerpt from an email that a friend sent to me, and I'll get your response to this. But it reads, "It's been said that people have to experience the evil in order to wake up. It's not enough to just tell them about it. But how much more do people need to see? Look how far we've been pushed, provoked, and prodded. Anyone who hasn't woken up yet and realized that this is nothing about keeping us safe from a virus is beyond hope. They're never going to wake up. Any further pushing and displays of evil is just going to torture those who've already seen it yet further." And just to continue, the plan is supposed to be that Trump could have stopped the scamdemic anytime he'd liked, but is allowing it to roll out so people experience it before he exposes it. But it does seem crazy he's allowing it to go this far and is still playing along. How the fuck are normies supposed to wake up when he is playing along? He's giving validity to the plan by claiming that he caught COVID. He's now talking about vaccines as well. He may well be talking in code, but most people don't see it. How can he expect a mass awakening when the media was used to mind control, using KGB mind control tactics, and then expect people to suddenly wake up? I think you get the gist of where this person is going there. I'll get your response to that.
Yeah, and again, it's a great question. These are all very, very fair, important questions to be asking here. The response to all of this is always the one thing, which is that, remember, had they not intercepted this, then this was our reality. And there are no two ways about it. And so then their goal was to move to the protocols of the Georgia Guidestones as quickly as possible. So we see this playing out. So, and the best response to that is we see this playing out. in those documents that were leaked from the Liberal caucus meeting in early November, I think late October of 2020, from Justin Trudeau's Liberal caucus. And in the minutes that were leaked out of there, they laid out the plan. And of course, it's the plan for Canada. But of course, this was also therefore going to be the plan for virtually every other country as well. And what
FEMA camps, guillotines, all sorts.
Incredible, because again, I'm Canadian, and our background is so peaceful, just so laid back that it can't happen here. Canada would be the last place it would happen to. But this was the plan all along, is to lull us into sense of complacency and sleep, to be bought up by China, to be used as a marshalling ground for the invasion of the United States by the Chinese and all of these underground tunnels. It's just incredible. Canada was basically being turned into, post-World War II, a Trojan horse for the secretive invasion of the United States by the Chinese, which is why, as we talked yesterday, the entire Obama presidency was all about get the guns, Sandy Hook's, and everywhere you looked in America, there's another, nightclub shooting, and everything was designed to take the guns away. So you take the guns away, Barack Obama, and then Obama was giving the guns to all of these terrorist organizations in the world, including Antifa. So you see how well planned they are. So likely they weren't going to use this potentially at all, or they would only use it in 2020. But here they are, way back, from.
But American patriots don't give up their guns easy, do they? As they discovered.
And thank God that they don't. Thank God that there's that independent spirit that exists there, that has fought this tooth and nail, because it didn't work. And they had to stop at a certain point, because these false flags were becoming so evident that they were fake, because of the same actors being regurgitated, and people like yourself pointing that out again and again and again in your posts and stuff, showing this, that they had to back off. They couldn't do more because the same actors were now being called. That's the lady from the Boston Marathon. She played the teacher who was shot in the head at Sandy Hook, and she also played. So they were exposed, and they had to back off of those things because of the patriots like yourself that are awake, and we're fighting this every step of the way. So we are in a reality where you have to see it to believe it. You cannot be told. And of course, how are you going to tell anyone? What did Trump demonstrate? Why did Trump turn his presidency into a Twitter account, right? The reason being is to, one, have direct access for the truth to get out there, because it can't in the fake news. I mean, wow, Donald Trump's the first person to ever do that. And just to say the news is fake news, it's just completely fake. So then his presidency was run through Twitter. And then Twitter completely brutalized his Twitter account and eventually shut it down, and they suppressed his stuff. And then this is the birth of all of these fact checkers, which when you find out who these people are, you're going to be angry. You're going to be really, really angry about these fact checkers. They're just little demons. They're not fact-checking anything. They're just saying it, and then they're supported by another fact-checker site, which they're all the same. So you have to see it to believe it, is the big thing. But like we saw with regard to Canada, this plan was moving very fast, was designed within like, just look at what they said with Canada. Within months, people were in FEMA camps. And then they were simply saying that the only way to get out of these FEMA camps would be to sign up to this false Jasara, this false golden, the gift of the golden goose, that they were going to unveil this new world order. And remember what was unveiled, and this is how they would then make the sale of Canada to China legal in their system, is because for Canadians to be able to get out of these FEMA camps, one, they had to sign these oath cards swearing never to rise up against the government. And then two, the government was going to let them out and release all COVID restriction bans against them. Remember, at this point, Canada was going to be completely locked down. People weren't even going to be able to get out of cities, let alone provinces, or leave the country at all. And they were talking about major cities quadranting them off, northeast, northwest, southwest, southeast, and people were going to be forced to stay in those areas. And the only way out was through this new process, and this was they were going to give everyone in Canada a universal living wage, and apparently the numbers were going to be attractive, so that people were going to go, wow, like that's actually pretty darn good. So for the rest of their lives, every single month, a universal living wage. And then secondly, all their debt was going to be wiped out. So any debt that you previously had, no matter what it was going to be taken away. All Canadians had to do to receive all of these gifts, including the travel ban being lifted upon them. So magically, the COVID is no longer a problem for them, were two things. One, they would have to agree to be vaccinated and chipped, because the moving forward was all about tracking people. And then the second aspect of this was they had to give up ownership of all assets. And you see, that's where then Trudeau's private sale of Canada to China could then legally have weight to it. And China would have then literally owned Canada. And then they would have come in and they would have put Canadians back into concentration camps, regardless of whatever they signed previously. And then this invasion, the Trojan horse, would have come to a gunless America. Had Obama had his way and had Xi won, then this was the plan. This was what was coming. So it's so palpable, it's so real, it's so horrific, and we are so complicit with it, then you have to see this play out. And there's no other way than to have a movie, because they control the mainstream media. And it's because it's what better way to express this and explain this than this? It's because the vast majority of us say that the 6 o'clock news is the truth, or the Washington Post, the New York Times, and the LA Times, the combination of those three papers, that's the truth. Sure, they lie to us about this, that, and the other thing, but surely the news is real. The news is telling you the truth, and that's the truth. So if it's not being talked about on a Sunday morning talking head show, if it's not on those three newspapers, and if it's not on the 6 o'clock news, it isn't real. And so then you say to yourself, then how do you awaken people if that's all they do? Because if Trump suddenly took down the mainstream media, that's a massive act. That's where people essentially allow themselves to live in complete distraction, The Walking Dead. And if they took that down, there would be so many Americans that would be on the doorstep of the White House looking to take Donald Trump down and to hang him for treason for taking away their TV. Don't take my TV away. Don't take my Hollywood away. Don't do this. So people are angry at Trump. They're angry at the Q team for allowing these things to play out. But the fact of the matter is, and I was explaining this to you yesterday, you take the head of the beast off, and then for 4 years, what's left is the body. And they have taken a fine-tooth comb through the hair of the beast, and they have been scurrying back and forth to find every little tick, polytick, every little source of mange, every source of disease and illness. They've been combing through the carcass of the Hydra, and they've been searching for sleeper cells, underground cells, underground agencies, other agencies that they weren't aware of, that have been deep state, but have been deep undercover. All of this is also necessary because what they want to do now is end this for good. They don't want this to reappear 10 years from now or 20 years from now. So one of the reasons why this is allowed to play out and taking as long as it is to get as many of these sleeper cells as possible. Remember, and people don't give Trump credit for this, but remember when it was announced that Trump essentially had taken down, and he did, this incredible criminal network that was responsible for so much crime all through North America and assassinations, killings. It's this group called MS-13. And the MS-13 group, which was started by the Cabal, funded by Barack Obama, and weaponized by Barack Obama's presidency, this particular group was running amok, and they were largely a lot of these crisis actors that were playing virtual roles, and they were responsible for killings, and again, always to make society look as dangerous and as ugly as possible. So they were kind of like a roving hit squad for the Cabal and for the Obama presidency, and Trump had to take these people down in plain sight. You have to allow this plan to play itself out for people to see it, but you also have to allow this play out to be able to capture everyone. And if that isn't enough for you, remember what's coming with our children, this truth about what they've been doing to our kids and how expansive this is, how many kids this has involved. And now all this stuff is starting to come out, right? All this stuff is starting to come out now about Walmart, through the series that we did with you on the show after the takedown of the Cabal from A to Z, when Colleen and I did the part 3, which is right here, right now, and it focused on Epstein Island, and then Wuhan, China, and then the new Silk Road that runs all the way to Venice. And it was all about the children, and it was all about how China had been turned into a production facility for children and the harvesting of adrenochrome. And that Walmart, it was never created to sell you consumer goods and make a profit. That's what it wasn't created for. That it was created as subterfuge, as a plausible reason to be able to have this massive shipping of live children around the world, going into major centers, and nobody saying anything because it's a Walmart ship. It's Maersk shipping. Walmart purchased Maersk shipping to be able to ship all of their products. But what was in these products, what were on these ships, is again the furniture and all this stuff that was China. There's no company in history that has a greater connection to China than Walmart. And it was about trafficking children, in particular, trafficking human beings, children, and adrenochrome. And then what do we reveal to everyone in that show? That this is where when Walmart and Maersk Shipping could not keep up with the demands for children and adrenochrome, then you had the Clinton Foundation buying up and creating Evergreen Shipping. What was Hillary Clinton's Secret Service code name while she was in the White House with Bill Clinton? Her name was Evergreen. Evergreen Shipping for dear Hillary. And what did Evergreen Shipping specialize in? Live art. And because they specialized in ship live art, they got around customs officials. So this is how Evergreen sold their shipping to clients around the world for these exorbitant prices, is because you could be guaranteed that your shipments of live art were going to get there on time and without those pesky inspections from custom duty officers and whatnot, because they're shipping live art. And suddenly, somehow, live art means that hey, back off, we don't check, and again, so evergreen shipping and these, they put it in plain sight, the shipping of live children around the world. So all of this stuff has to come out, and it's not going to be revealed on the nightly news, in the papers, with the mainstream media, because they're complicit with all of this. So they had to be taken down. And then the election fraud of 2020 is how you take them down, because big tech, the mainstream media, and the Democrat Party are all three together as one, controlled by China, who's controlled by the Cabal. And this is all that's going to be revealed in the coming weeks and months, is this incredible connection between the Democratic Party, between virtually every sort of major institution of organized society, and the mainstream media and big tech, all to China, all to the Cabal, and that's how they rule the world. And then, boom, the veneer falls, and people are left going, "Yike! Wow!"
And as we said yesterday, the likes of us are going to be the cleanup crew, the mop-up crew for people when they just completely freak out and lose their minds, because we've been through our dark night of the soul. With me, it was 10 years ago when I learned about trauma-based mind control and all the horrors of satanic ritual abuse and all this. Been there, been through that darkness. Other people, most people, have no comprehension of this stuff going on, and they're going to have to deal with this. And they're going to need support, they're going to need therapy, they're going to need guidance. That's where the likes of us are going to be lent upon to offer that. So if we're watching a movie play out in reverse, we must be close to the opening credits right now. And a date that I hear being bandied about is January 6th. So January 6th is the 12th night of Christmas. It's actually the date on which Christmas is celebrated in certain Middle Eastern nations. And there seems to be a lot pinned on January the 6th, right? Maybe that's when the opening time.
Yeah, again, as we discussed yesterday, Mark, there is no value in President Trump asking America to show up for this peaceful march on January 6, 2021 in Washington, D.C., if all he's going to say is, trust us, we've got the evidence, trust us, we've won this thing, trust us, because nothing's changed. And he, on January 6th, that will put him 14 days away from 12 noon on January 20th. And if he hasn't proven to the highest court of the land in the United States that there was election fraud, then a dead guy and a man dressed up as a woman are going to become the president and the vice president of the United States. And that can't happen, and that won't happen. So then, like what Mark is saying, obviously, with this is that a lot is about to take place. And I can't possibly tell you, because they would never tell me or anyone anything about their plans. The reason that they've succeeded is because they have been in absolute silence. So if there are other people out there that are saying that they're directly connected to the Q team, it just can't be the case. There's no way that this could have played out if they had leaks with regard to certain truthers or certain celebrities that are coming out on the right side of things. They're not releasing anything to anyone. And this group that we're talking about with President Trump, the Q team, and the NSA and the military, it is tight. It is smaller than you would expect. It is fewer families than you might think. It is a very, very tightly knit group, and they're doing everything themselves, and they're not relying on others. They'll help people like ourselves that are on the right side of things with little bits of pointers and documents, and I think support from time to time. But that's it. That's it. So the key thing to note here is, and we'll just go back just a little bit here, is that when the Cabal was taken down, in the days and the weeks and the months after, so from, let's say, December 26th until early March, there were a mass arrest, and that's where Mark, foreshadowed this, being talked about by David Wilcox and others a number of years ago, that this was going to happen, that this was coming. This is what happened, and this is why you saw a whole host of things that you can't deny to verify that what we're sharing with you is absolutely the truth in the case. Like all of these CEOs of all of these major corporations stepping down. It's my time. I just know, I just thought about it on my own. I just thought about it. It's a good time for me to step down. Yeah, I thought it was a good time for me to step down. They're all stepping down right after this time. Now, another incredible thing, Mark and I didn't know at the time. See, we're learning and growing just like you are as well. But at the time, Mark and I did a podcast together, a show together, and we were talking about this odd phenomenon because it's pertinent to Mark's books, Musical Truth, Volumes 1 and 2, and what's going on with all of these celebrities. But like Mark pointed out, it's not just the pop stars and the Hollywood stars. It's the Pope. It's the heads of all of these corporations. It's key members of organized society, and they're all getting punched in their left eye. And then the other thing is that's so weird about it, like we said, is that normally if they break a nail, Hollywood feminine stars are not going to show you their broken nail, but they're all out there gleefully showing you their blackened left eyes, like they were forced to. And so then all of a sudden, what you see in 2000 and 2017 and 18 is this thing to do of celebrities to get punched in the left eye or to have a bad accident, and it always just affected their left eyes. And there's a reason for all of these things, because when these mass arrests were done, most of them were, so we said the arrests from right after December 26th to early March. The military tribunals started in January and went into April of 2017. So this is fair but swift justice. And then what happened in May and through the summer was a series of executions, a mass number of executions of people who were fairly tried, fairly charged, and then justice was fairly administered to them. The reason being is that these people are so evil and they're such practitioners of black magic. If people laugh at this stuff and think that your words don't have meaning or value, or that people can cast spells, or that witches and warlocks are real and that they're capable of creating great harm from a distance. It's all real. It's all true. And these people could not be trusted. And there were a host. Virtually, let me put it to you this way. If the Trump team, the Q team, did not have a use for these people, a role to play, they were executed. They were executed so that no more problems, shenanigans, trouble could be caused by these people. So I have stayed out of this the whole time. I have not been one who have been saying this person's on this list or all these people. I've only shared with everyone two that we knew about because they were confirmed to us, and that was Prince Philip and Tom Hanks. And so we have shared with you all along, and people are going, no, Charlie, how can I believe you if you can't even get Tom Hanks right? No, Tom Hanks is not alive. Tom Hanks has been dead a long while now.
And Prince Philip was always a prominent member of the Black Eye Club. You were always seeing Prince Philip with the black eye.
Yeah.
And I've just quickly looked up the Black Eye Club, and it seems it really became a thing in 2018. It was really getting talked about in 2018. People were noticing that all these celebrities and famous people were showing up with black eyes. So 2018 is consistent with the timeline that you're laying out there.
Okay, so now...
And also, where is Prince Philip? Where is Prince Philip now, and where are the rest of the royals? I made a video the other day asking the question about the Queen's Christmas speech that she does traditionally every year. There was nothing about it to prove that it was recorded any time recently. it could have been done months ago because it was spoken in such timeless, generic terms. But lots of other people seem to think that it could have been CGI generated anyway. Yeah. And she's just not around anymore. So there's another clue right there. What's happened to the royals? And why are they using doubles of Prince Charles? We can see this.
Yeah. It's not the same people. So then, like, that's what I'm saying. So now, if what we're telling you is the truth, you can start to piece this together for yourself. What we're saying to you is the truth. Now, what started to happen in 2017 and 18, suddenly these famous people were less in the public. You were seeing them less and less and less. And then when they did come back into the public, boom, they were all having accidents. Richard Branson was out in the middle of the night and he fell on his face in the Virgin Islands. And his whole side of his face is just massive trauma to his eye and stuff like this. Why? What is this signifying? Why is this done? Because if the movie is continuing, then you have to have actors playing roles for these minions and for the appearance that everything is continuing as normal, so that everything is just moving along and we're just watching things get more and more evil and certain people get more and more deep into this, but it all just seems to be, nothing's really changed. It's all happening naturally, normally. So you can't get these body doubles to be exact, and you can't get actors with makeup to be exact. So this is why, Hollywood started to collapse in 2017, with the collapse becoming essentially complete in 2018, and virtually nothing coming out of Hollywood at all. The movies that they were releasing out, these are things that they had in the can for years, and they were just doling out. But in terms of Hollywood as a machine producing movies, it just came to a complete halt. One, because half of these demons were executed, were given a fair trial and executed, but the other half, who were not partaking in adrenochrome, those people, they need to play the role of a lifetime. They need to play the role of a lifetime. So I was sharing with Mark yesterday, you had Anthony Hopkins, if that's Anthony Hopkins, and Jonathan Pryce in 2019 creating a series called The Two Popes on Netflix. And it just happens to be that, you can't have these Jesuits alive. So Pope Francis cannot be left alive. He had to be taken out. But you have to have a Pope Francis if this illusion is going to continue. So how do you achieve this? Well, you just get Jonathan Pryce, who's already portraying a younger Pope Francis in these conversations, with the demon Pope. And then when that filming is done, you just get him into a more advanced makeup and a better quality makeup, and you transform Jonathan Pryce into Pope Francis, and very few people are noticing the difference. So again, if all of this is true, why then the black eye? Because when you can't get exact duplications, you have to give the masses plausible acceptance, plausible believability for them to have some kind of excuse, and then they can buy that. And so with all of these celebrities in 2018 suddenly looking different, Prince Charles, like you said, Mark, that's clearly not Prince Charles at all. For those of us who have clear vision, clarity, that's just not even close to Prince Charles. Other people are going, well, I see what you're saying, that's pretty close. And then there are others that are going, no, that clearly that's Prince Charles. And clearly it's not. So what is getting them to believe that it is this cognitive dissonance that's within us. And it is giving them this plausible believability that they can latch on to another lie and help that ease their pain and suffering within them. So
well, again, it comes down to the trust and the faith that people have in mainstream media outlets as well. So Sky News presented this interview with Prince Charles. It wasn't him, it was the double. But because it's Sky News saying, here's Prince Charles, most people have no reason to doubt that that's Prince Charles because Sky News has said so. They haven't twigged that these media outlets are liars. They're paid liars. It's what they do.
Right. And so let's piece this together now, folks. Did the Queen have a black eye? And did she come out in public and show her black eye? And did she look different afterwards? Ding. Did Prince Philip, he's the king, like I said to Mark on the show that we did, Prince Philip spent more time with a black eye than without a black eye. And then Mark's like, yeah, you know, it made me thinking that they must just have regular domestic violence. And she's throwing the toaster up and at him in the face all the time. Oh, got me again. Because Prince Philip was always, because if you saw without the makeup, if you saw without this, you know, this makeup being applied, you'd realize that's not Prince Charles. That's the problem. That's the problem. So then, you know, Richard Branson, and you go through all of these corporate heads, and then Prince Charles and the Queen, and just keep going down the line. You know, when all of this went crazy with the last batch of adrenochrome being taken away, that was the narrative, you know, in early 2020 with the COVID, and that the last batch of adrenochrome out of Wuhan, China was tampered with, and then all these Hollywood stars were going mental and crazy because their adrenochrome was tampered with, and then they didn't have any more, and they were doing all these podcasts, all of them, and they looked so horrible and stuff. And then Madonna is doing a song about fried fish, and I showed everyone on the show we did what fried fish means and how horrific that is. That's not Madonna. That's not even close to Madonna. How can you think that that's Madonna? But again, it's easier to accept the lie than it is to process the truth, which then topples your entire world. That's the problem where we're at right now. Why did they let this continue? Why did they let this continue? Because it's hard for people to accept any of this, because if they do, their whole world is going to collapse. That's what Mark is saying to you. When all of this comes out, there are people that are going to be completely numb with nothing left standing around them. Yeah. That's the truth. That's the truth. And so they'll do anything to avoid hearing the truth and continue believing. So that's why the election fraud, that's why big tech, that's why the Democrats stealing the election, and they all get tied together. They all get tied to China. Listen, China has been taken over by Trump 4 years ago. China has been essentially the birth or a new republic government that is really behind the scenes running things, and that the production facilities in China have been producing massive good technology to help what is being built for us behind the scenes right now. Everything's being done behind the scenes.
China, because ostensibly the Chinese Communist Party is running the government in China, so the official story goes. I know Steve Bannon put out a video earlier this year where he had some officials from the new government there, and he was claiming that the Chinese Communist Party has been toppled from the Chinese government. They've become a federation, and it's now run by new personnel. But as far as the general public's concerned, the CCP is still very much in place. And what we've seen unrolled in these various countries, specifically the UK, is Chinese-style communism. And a tenet of that is stripping all joy and all pleasure from society. And this again ties into all these restrictions that Boris Johnson's been putting on people. You can't have a New Year's Eve party. You can't have your family round for Christmas. So it feels as if Chinese-style communism is being rolled out across these other nations. But it's confusing because we then get the story that the CCP has been taken down in China and is no longer a thing. So maybe we want to put some clarity on that.
Again, just to clarify, the narrative, the whole point of the focal point to this story, to this movie, is that it leads to election fraud. It's big tech, the Democratic Party, and the mainstream media, all in this together. So these three demonic agencies, all in this together, and that they're all being controlled by the puppet master. And that's why all of this information over the last 3 weeks has come out about all of these Chinese seductive agents that were released into the United States to capture all of these politicians. So this was giving them, free sex and free access to kids and lots of money and whatever else. And all they had to do was, sign these loyalty cards to China and put these Chinese key agents from the CCP in their offices. And then that was released just a couple of weeks ago. All of these various Democratic politicians who were spending record amounts to win their elections. So I did a post just last week saying, how does it make any sense for the average senator or House representative in the United States to spend between $10 and $20 million on their election campaign for a job that pays $170,000 a year for 4 years? It doesn't add up to millions. That doesn't even come close to getting your money back. Why are so many people willing to spend so much money to earn so little money in return? And this money is coming from China. So the story is that it's the China virus. The story is that these politicians and the big tech companies are all secretly being run and controlled by China. It all leads back to China, because then they're going to tie China through this new Silk Road to Venice. And then they're going to unveil to the world that it's Venice and that it's these 13 bloodline families. And then literally these are the Canaanites, and it goes right back to the Bible. It goes right back to Cain killing Abel. We are the children of Abel. They are the children of Cain. They are the left hemisphere of the brain. We are the light of the world. We are the right hemisphere of the brain. That's why they lie to us and get away with it, because we're honest, decent, hardworking, because we're innocent, we believe. We tend to trust people. We're trustworthy people, and we trust. And they take advantage of everything that's good in us, and they use it against us. So that's why all of this had to be shown to you. And that's why it has to be this election. And that's why it has to lead to China. And then that's going to be the complete crumble. And then there's nowhere else for people to go. And remember what I said at the beginning of the show. All of this started outside of Donald Trump, because he was not the sitting president. He was president-elect, but he was not the sitting president. This was a military op, and it has to go that way as well. It has to end that way as well. So there's no doubt in my mind what is coming. And, of course, Trump has already made that. We already are under martial law by his executive order of February of 2018, where he said if there's clear evidence of election fraud by foreign sources and domestic traders, then we have a state of national emergency. You're already living it.
There are two narratives that have been running in terms of financial systems that are said to be incoming. So the one that everyone's got to hear about this in the public domain is the Great Reset coming out of the World Economic Forum, courtesy of Klaus Schwab. Who the hell is Klaus Schwab? Nobody had heard of him before this year. He's supposed to be 83 years old, and yet he seems to have no history that anyone knows about. And he sounds like a really bad James Bond villain when he speaks.
Yeah.
He really does. And then the other financial system is the quantum financial system, and that Charlie Ward talks about, and the Gesara system, which you've talked about a lot. So you can't have both, right? So these two systems seem to conflict with each other. And one is a very bad deal for humanity, because the Great Reset ties into what you were talking about in Canada with that offer that was going to be made to Canadian citizens, whereby they relinquish all rights to their own property and just become a product of the state, like communism. And then Jasara is obviously meant to be very beneficial to everyone in society. So there's a direct contradiction between what we're told is coming with these two systems. Maybe you want to speak to that.
Absolutely. And I've said to you all along that the system that is coming, remember, it's not filled with leprechauns and pots of gold, faria. It's about taking away what is illegal. And that is and should be the basis to anything that is the truth and that is righteous. So the key to the protocols of Nasara that are going to be rolling out is, and this is all provable by all the things that Donald Trump has literally done and, of course, talked about in his speeches. One of his key speeches, the one that I'll remember probably the most, was that Whirlpool speech in Ohio with 17 golden tinted Whirlpool boxes on stage. And his whole skin was gold, his hair was gold, and then he said he had to go away for 4 days, but that he would be back and stuff. Where did he go for those 4 days, and why is it after that speech? In that speech, what did he say? He said the problem is that everything is overpriced, and that's the problem. He said, we live in a world where everything is way overpriced, and he said it's because there's a middleman. He says, nobody seems to know who they are. He said, nobody seems to know. Nobody knows their names or where they're from and stuff, but there's this group. And he said that they're creating this, they're taking a piece. He said, almost like the mafia, and they're taking a big piece out of it, and they're driving the prices up. He said, it just seems to me fair that we would, we don't need a middleman. We get rid of them, and then the prices will come down. And he said, I see no reason why pharmaceuticals that are being produced in the United States, so they get all of the benefits of living in America and all these tax breaks and whatnot, that the lowest prices in the world for pharmaceuticals should be here in America first, since they're originating in America. Everything's being done by American taxpayers. And so what happened after that? The prices of pharmaceutical drugs across the board just plummeted. And these EpiPens, which they, certain kids have to live, and these pens that cost pennies to make, and then filled with adrenaline, are then being sold for up to $500. Well, in just a couple of weeks of that speech, Trump had the price of those EpiPens down to $395 from $400 and some odd dollars. So what Trump said is that I'm going to get these prices down 90%. There's no reason for these prices to exist. So which is 10% of the cost. And he did it. He did it. And so he's foreshadowing, he's telling you who the enemy is. That's the mafia. And the mafia are the Jesuits, and the Jesuits are the ruling arm of this cabal, which are these 13 bloodline families. He's putting it out there in plain sight. And then he disappeared for 4 days. That was the exact same time that the end of the Fed really, really, really happened. Now, it's not been discussed. Nobody really knows this. But at that meeting, Donald Trump applied approximately, it was north of $13 trillion that was applied to the Fed, and this was all done in Davos, Switzerland. I can reveal that now. And then so everything that was owing for every nation in the world in terms of debt to the Fed was paid in full to the Fed. And so everybody's slate was wiped clean right after that Whirlpool speech. So whenever that was, right after that, when he disappeared, that's what he was doing. It was the ending of the Fed. Now, you're going to love this. In the moments after they completed that and transferred those funds into the Fed account and wiped out the debt for every single country in the world, what's the first thing they did? They then raided the Fed headquarters where they were. They arrested everyone. They seized all of the documents, and they seized back the zeros and ones that were used to zero out the debt, and they took it all back. And everyone was fully arrested, and the Fed was shut down. So there's this narrative right now that the Fed is still operating and in charge of things, and they're not. The illusion is,
Wikipedia tells you that it is.
Yes. So, of course, they're right, because Wikipedia always just needs a little more money. Wikipedia always needs a little more money to be right, but they're always right about these things. They got an answer for everything. So the illusion that the Fed is still there is real, but it isn't real. It's just an illusion. And so what exists are these treasuries. And the treasuries are jam-packed. And I guarantee you, the Queen's gold, and not just the Queen of England's gold, all of the royal families have all been taken out. You're looking at actors. And all of their wealth has been secured back to the people. And not for America, but from all over the earth. The wealth is being distributed back to where it was taken. So much wealth in this world was created by Africa. And so in these new African nations moving forward, their coffers have to be full as well, because so much wealth was stolen out of Africa. So this is how it's working. It's all going back. So the Nasara, how do you know Nasara is good and that these protocols are absolutely real and righteous? Because what the Nasara protocols talk about is removing the lie. So first, the usury, this charging of interest to create money. So all you have is the principal. If you charge interest on top of the principal, you've bankrupted the system, because all you have is the principal. That's what the principal is what is. A charge against it is the construct of the hands of man. It's an illusion. It's not real. But if we accept it as real, then we're the game monopoly and we become bankrupt. It's just a question of when everything collapses into the ground, because there's no way to pay back interest on the principal unless you borrow more money, which is more interest. So to pay back the first dollar, you have to borrow a second dollar to pay back the first dollar, which means you have to borrow a third dollar to pay back the second dollar, and then so on and so on and so on. So usury has been illegal in every single nation state in the history of mankind. And the people who have been trying to do this with usury over the years have been kicked out of every single nation in the world, because it is so evil, because it is a system of control. So one, Nasara, usury is gone. So suddenly your money is now backed upon real value. So we took back all the gold that they had been stealing, gold and silver and other precious metals. So you're going to have a currency, and there will be a currency. The people who are telling you that we're going to a cashless society, and it's going to be that XRP and everything else. They're just looking to make some money right now. They're looking to make. There's no way in the future we're going to have any kind of monetary system that has a middleman that is going to make you pay for their nefarious service. To exchange your currency back and forth. No. That's what we just got rid of. So that's not coming. There's a lot of people out there that are lying to you right now about what's coming with the money, and that's because they're looking to make lots of money with their cryptocurrencies right now, and they've carefully driven the price up of their currencies to a huge amount. And they're making money hand over fist by scaring people with fear tactics into getting into this market. When what was been released by elements of the Q team all the way through is that there's no protection, there will be no guarantee and no protection of replacing your cryptocurrencies, that your regular accounts will be honored and will be replaced with the new currencies moving forward. So you don't have to worry about, your bank going under. They've taken snapshots of everything. They've got everyone's account numbers. They know your transaction histories. They know what you legitimately have in there, and those monies are protected. You don't have to worry about it. People are saying, should we take all of our money out of the bank? Well, that's always a good idea. but you don't have to. So the system is already in place, and it knows what you're worth and what has to be given and will be given to you. So usury gone. Then that means that with these currencies without interest means that inflation is now over. The only reason that inflation ever existed is because of this fake money. That's the only reason why it ever existed, is this fake money with usury and interest on it, and then you have to pay back, so you have to borrow more money, and it creates instability in your economy and in your currency, and then the prices fluctuate, and they go up and they go down, and the interest rates therefore go up and they go down. It's all over. It's all over because that's false. So the dollar that moving forward is backed by gold and silver, and it's a standard, which means that it never changes, and there'll never ever be such a thing as inflation again. And the prices, Trump has already shown you that the prices were artificially inflated. Now, mostly for your house, mostly for your car. So one of the first things that's going to be coming is this complete reevaluation of what land value and house values are. And so suddenly, if you've had a $300,000 mortgage and monthly payments of $2,500 a month over 30 years trying to pay that off, it's all going to change, because one of the very first things that's going to happen is this reevaluation of this new monetary system, and that your home is going to go from being worth $400,000 to $40,000, and your debt of $300,000 is going to go to $30,000, and your monthly payment of $2,500 is going to go down to $250. Your wages stay the same. The cost of everything drops 90%. Inflation is no more. Suddenly, the average person is wealthier than they can possibly imagine. And what has Nasara done? Nothing except take the illegality of the Cabal away. That's the beauty of this system, is taking the illegality away. The only thing that I have talked to people about, and this is so real, about massive amounts of money coming to you, is based upon this system of the Maritime Admiralty Law System, Mark, and you know about that. And when you are born, you are a dead man walking, because they never allowed the real you to escape the birthing canal. You were brought ashore by a doctor, and he took possession of your value, because you are a possession to them. And so what they did with parents is that to allow you parents to take your child out of the hospital, you had to first just sign these forms. And then these forms, which are important because, you have to have a birthing certificate, what it does is it turns you from a real person into a corporation, which is a corpseration. Corpse is dead. These are dead bodies. And that's where this love of the Cabal in Hollywood to make all of these movies about zombies and about dead men walking is because that's the undercurrent to what's been going on. And when this comes out, people are just, like you say, are just going to be leveled to the ground once again. So your birth certificate...
Again, consent by trickery is not consent, going back to what we were saying earlier. They have to go to all these, all these sneaky little means to try and get people to agree to it, because no one in their right mind would agree to sign over their child and allow them to become a corporation and trade it on the stock exchange. So they have to resort to trickery, and that's not true consent.
It isn't at all. And remember, folks, really quickly, because it's important that you hear this, the banking system, which is based on what's called fractional reserve banking, where when you deposit, by the way, D means to take away, so when you deposit your money, that literally means that you're giving it to them and that they are now in control of your money, because that's what D means. D means to take away. That's why they call them deposits. And then we consent to it because we don't know the truth. We don't know what DE means. And so we accept deposits. Wow. So it's just pure theft. But fractional reserve banking means that with everything that we deposit to the bank, they hold 10% in reserve, and the other 90% they get to lend out to other consumers 9 more times. You like that? There's 10. 1 gets kept in the vault, and then 9 times they get to lend out the balance of your money. So if you deposit $1,000, 100 goes into the bank vault. $900 can be lent out 9 times. 9 times 900 is $8,100 that came out of thin air. Where does that money come from? Zeros and ones on a computer. So every time in your life where you've gone to the bank and you've requested a loan for anything, but obviously especially your homes, your houses, the money for your loans is coming from your birth certificate, because the moment that you're born, somebody owns you, and they've been trading you back and forth on all of these different exchanges everywhere in all sorts of ways, and then they've been betting against you. They have these types of investments where they make money on you if you get cancer, and if you get cancer by a certain age, and if you get divorced more than once, and if you this happens to you, you lose your job, whatever, and then they're betting against you. The people who own your birthing certificate, perfectly legal because it's a 2-dimensional piece of paper, okay? You're just consenting to all of this. So in their eyes and their laws, it's perfectly legal, but it's you, because we buy into all of this, right? So what they've been doing is every time you go to the bank, it's your money that is being drawn in. So when you ask for a bank loan for a home for $400,000, the $400,000 that comes to your credit union comes from your birthing certificate account. And it goes there for about 1 minute. And then they show you on the screen that this is the money, and then they show you that they've transferred this amount into your account. But then, because it's a loan, they quickly take that away, so it disappears. And then what happens? All that money goes right back to whoever owns your birthing certificate account. It's subterfuge. And then they make you, so everybody's already been paid. The moment that you take out a loan, there's no one who's out of pocket at all. Everyone's been paid from your birthing certificate. And then they make you, over 25 or 30 years, pay it back with interest, which can be up to 3 times the original amount. So, and we participate, we willingly go along, we consent to this because we don't know any better. And that's what's been going on. So all I wanted to share with you, this other aspect of Nasara, the real truth about this, is that each one of you has a fortune that exists. This is not fantasy at all. This is not some theory at all. This is absolute truth. Each of you has a fortune that has been rescued. Because guess what? Guess where? All financial obligation records have been kept for every single person in the world for the last 100 years. In Venice. In Venice. Because they are the exchequer of Earth. They are the exchequer of mankind. They own you. They own me. They own us. They did. They owned us, and all the records were kept in Venice. And when they raided Venice and took the head off the Cabal, they took all of these documentations, all of these what are called true original copies. And that's why I've been sharing with everyone, if you challenge any of your loans right now with the bank, your bank has to provide you within 30 days what's called the true original copy of your loan agreement. It could be for anything, including a credit card. There is a true original copy, and it has your live signature on it, and it has to have a live signature of a representation of that corporation that you're doing business with on it as well. If you demand to see your true original copy, they have 30 days in which to provide it to you. If they cannot, that loan does not exist because it is not provable. It is not real. And I guarantee all of you, they can't provide you with your true original forms because they don't have them anymore. Because all of these true original copies were kept in Venice, and Venice was taken down. And that's the truth. Everything is changing, guys. Everything is coming back around. Everything is going to become simple again. And money is going to be the least of your worries. There are not going to be money problems moving forward. There aren't. There's way more than enough wealth for everyone in the world. No one will go without because there's no need for it.
Now, how about we unveil the Trump card? How about we do that?
So, as I told you, and Mark is quite right to say that the problem with Trump and the coming days now is that whatever he announces, that there's a large group of people, not just in America, but across the earth, that have been so brainwashed by the mainstream media to hate this man, right? From the very beginning when he was just announced that he was going to be a Republican nominee, hate, 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 evil, evil. Why?
But they liked him when he was on The Apprentice.
That's right. Kind of a funny guy, but hate, hate, danger, danger. Exactly. So how did they get away with this? Remember what I told you, that they executed most, but not all. There are some of these demons, a very small group that they did make deals with. And these are people that are still alive. Now, they still have body doubles because without their adrenochrome, they look like hell, and they have little or no energy to be able to do the things that they were doing. But Nancy Pelosi, and that's all we have time for today to discuss, is Nancy Pelosi. She's alive. Nancy Pelosi is alive, and she's made a deal. And the deal that Nancy Pelosi has made is the Trump card. And what this means is that when the day comes when we need a confirmation that this election fraud is real, and that for the Democratic Party and then the supporters of the Democratic Party to let this go and accept that, yes, massive corruption has taken place, and yes, we cheated, and yes, he won the election, and yes, we need to now have a full investigation. That's why Nancy Pelosi has been allowed to avoid execution. That's why she'll spend the rest of her life in a military prison and not be executed, because she made this deal to become the Trump card. She's the Trump card. And when Trump drops the Trump card to the ground, she's going to say, he's telling the truth. He's telling the truth. We cheated. We cheated. We're wrong. And now a full investigation has to occur. We must accept President Trump as the President of the United States, and now we have to look into all of this corruption. And that's it. And that's how it's going to be done. And it wasn't until recently, until we were kind of shown the light with this, that I was able to piece everything finally and understand all of this completely and have it make sense and answer every question and explain everything. And it wasn't until that last piece of the puzzle came to us that we were able to do this.
And that's why you wanted to do the show today, fittingly on the last day of 2020.
Yep. And she is respected she's the queen of the House of Representatives. Feinstein is the queen of the Senate. And when they say something, it goes. And Nancy Pelosi is the person that all of these lost souls who identify themselves so deeply with the Democratic Party cling to. And if she says it, they will have to accept it.
And we said off air yesterday, half jokingly, that if you're wrong about all of this, a whole load of people are going to want your head served up on a plate. But if you're right about all this, imagine, you're going to go down as a friggin' hero, man. You're going to be a prophet, you're going to be a guru, you're going to be a sage. In a few days we'll know, right?
Yeah, we will. And remember what Colleen and I said to you yesterday when you said that. And I said that that aspect scares us just as much as the taking you off to the main square option as well, because we don't want any fame, and we don't want any lauding or the placement of us as anything just besides what we are, which is two kids from Canada that are here to help. We're doing our best. We've done our best with all of this. I said to Mark yesterday, when all of this was happening, we saw that there was a need for someone to make sense of this and to help people to try and understand all of this. And that's what we've done. That's all we've done. And, your appreciation is welcome, but do not accept us as anything more than what we are, which is just a couple of people. We can get things right and we can get things wrong. That's why Colleen and I, we stay to the righteous path, the virtuous path. We cling to God we stand firmly on the right side, and that's how we keep ourselves out of trouble and making mistakes. Is that we stay on that straight and narrow path to the right side of things. So,
sure. Well, we've reached the end of 2020. Finally, it's a year that feels like it's been about 5 years. I can barely remember what things were like in the before times. And all of us are going to remember what we did this year. Our grandkids are going to say to us in decades to come, what was life like in 2020? I'll be able to show them these videos as a chronicle of these times. But interesting times lay ahead. Finally, the wait has just been torturous for me, interminable. I'm not the world's most patient person, as I've mentioned before. I'm ready. I'm ready for something to happen, more than ready. So I'll be watching with great interest the way things unfold in the days now and also weeks ahead. And I'm sure we'll be doing some more shows in 2021 to try and make sense of things going forward. But for today, well, what a year and what a show. Thank you for coming on.
You're so welcome, Mark, and I'll just end my contribution today by saying to everyone that Mark Devlin has just been a rock throughout. Mark's had his moments because he's human, and he has to show you that there is such a thing as righteous anger, and righteous anger has its place. It's important, but it goes, and that's what it's always done with Mark. When Mark has shown his righteous anger, it's blown over, and then Mark has been right there again. And the thing that I would encourage all of you to remember when everything is said and done about Mark Devlin is that Mark is the one that kept all of this grounded together in the middle, in the center. He stayed grounded. He stayed centered through all of this, where people were running off and in the truth community saying Trump is fake, none of this is real, and whatnot. And Mark put himself really out on the line by being in between these two camps, these two worlds, and has been a very calm, stabilizing figure. And again, when Mark has shown his anger has been righteous anger, and there's nothing wrong with righteous anger, because like a storm, it passes over. It will pass over you and wash away, and it's important to let itself out. So I want to thank you, Mark, because you have been such a huge, huge proponent for sanity and for peace in this year, while not sitting back and taking any of this. You've been on the streets of London pointing out the COVID hoax that has been perpetrated. And I would humbly suggest moving forward that Mark is going to be one of these people that millions and millions and millions of people are going to go to and say, okay, so what do we do next? Where do we go from here? And it's at this point where they're going to need you more than ever.
Well, I'm as uncomfortable with praise as you are. I'm a humble guy. And really, everything I've done this year has been motivated by the same factors as what you've said. You know, you're doing it because somebody had to step up and take on this role. And it's not really any kind of a big deal. It's just your obligation, your commitment to creation to be doing this. And that's why I do what I do. I can't imagine not doing it. I can't imagine having just sat back and allowed this whole shit show to unfold this year without getting involved and saying what needed to be said. So it just comes very naturally to me, and it's just the right thing to do. That's why you do it. That's why Colleen does it. That's why I do it. That's why many others do it. So we'll leave things on that note. Thanks for coming on today. All the best to you, brother, and I'll catch you again in 2021.
Thank you, my friend. And good night, everyone. Thanks for being here. We love you so much. Thanks, Mark.
And Happy New Year, and hopefully it will be.